Alright, this is Shenron's Wish, and this is What If Issei Was Odd-Eye's Pendulum Dragon. So, we're going to be introducing a new type of dragon, Pendulum Dragons. Now, Pendulum Dragons are dragons with crystals all over their bodies, and a chest in their chest has a giant crystal coming out of it with some scales protecting it. Well, the scales look like they're made of metal, when really they're just golden scales. Pendulum dragons usually have lots of golden scales, and they make themselves look like metal. And how pendulum dragons are created are through regular means or energy creation. Energy creation meaning a class of energy is high enough to a point for a pendulum dragon to be created. The energy can be made naturally, which is usually how most pendulum dragons are made, and natural pendulum dragons that aren't made through intercourse usually take about 3 million years to create one. And there's also infinite dragons, because I need to explain those. Now, with pendulum dragons, they've all been wiped out, and the natural energy has been slowed due to the war with the devils, angels, and fallen. They've resorted to using sin jutsu, so they're taking a lot of energy and using it for their war. And now the universe has been drained, and it's slowly starting to regain that energy. Pendulum dragons are created throughout crystals, and these crystals will crystallize and turn into a baby pendulum dragon. That's the universal way. Then there's intercourse, and then I already explained energy classes. Now, infinite dragons. Infinite dragons are created from the concept of infinity. And infinite dragons can become common during certain era. Like the war between the devils, fallen, and angels. 3 infinite dragons were born, but 2 of them died, leaving Orpheus, the infinite dragon, the last infinite dragon of the infinite dragon race. Pardon the background, I have siblings. And Orpheus, being the last remaining infinite dragon, went to the void where Great Red lied. And Orpheus is known to be a great hater of Great Red, because it has come to her knowledge that pendulum dragons fight infinite dragons over territory in the void, per se. There's only been one child between a pendulum dragon and an infinite dragon, which was the result of Great Red. Great Red was a pendulum dragon created throughout a clash, and that clash was mixed with the power of children's dreams about a dragon with crystals. And when the crystal was formed, there were 3. All 3 of them came together and created Great Red, instead of them normally forming. Instead of one forming and the rest growing in from the child's power. But instead, the infinite pendulum dragon of the apocalypse, Great Red, was born. And Great Red still rose to be the strongest besides the God of the Bible. And the God of the Bible is still alive. He keeps watch over the system and still has created sacred gear. But now we go to the dimensional gap. Great Red's perspective. Great Red is currently flying around, zooming throughout the sky, peacefully. No bothers, quote unquote. And he hasn't seen much action ever since he's taken back his home for his people. And that's when Orpheus appeared. She demanded that he leave the dimensional gap. Pardon the noise in the background. Excuse me, people are trying to make videos. Turn it down. Blasting. My apologies. But anyways. Oh my. One moment. Please. Pardon the interruption. As I said, Orpheus came and demanded that Great Red leave. A thing like him shouldn't exist, she told him. But Great Red simply shook her off and said, if she wants his place in the dimensional gap as the ruler of it, she'd have to beat him. And their battle commenced. It was a long and trifling battle. But in the end, the battle was going to end with a clash. Both of them shot energy beams. Great Red even reverting to his human form to shoot a blast and keep up with Orpheus's speed. He found her to be an annoying one, to say the least. But a battle was a battle to him, and he always loved the rush of fighting. Well, slightly. He was more about his stunts. And Great Red and Orpheus's clash would manifest a crystal. Orpheus realizing that she just helped create an entirely stronger being than herself and Great Red. Great Red, intrigued, wondering how many orbs the child would have. And the child would have 4 orbs. A giant one for his chest, 2 for his horns, and another for his forehead. Eyes, 2 different shades, red and green. This was the creation of Odd Eyes. That's what Great Red named his child. Orpheus normally would have tried to destroy the child, but she felt a connection as a mother to keep it alive and away from Great Red. But unfortunately, the child was more Pendulum dragon, meaning she couldn't raise the child without learning the ways of a Pendulum dragon. And the baby formed. He was a small one. He was in a humane state, to say the least. He had 2 different hair. He was born in his human form. He had red and green hair, and he always had a happy attitude. But good for me, I have a photo to show you what Issei looks like. He looks like that. Specifically like that, don't go off cut. But that's his teenage form. But he does have the hair and eyes and all that. Anyways, I digress. The child is born in his human state and shifts into his dragon state for a better suit. Once he opens his eyes again, all they see is his red and green eyes piercing the dimensional gap. And with one blink, everything changed. The child changed how the dimensional gap looked. The dimensional gap was brighter and had colors. It was more cartoony. It kind of suited style. And the baby dragon flew around. Well, technically swam. He swam around the dimensional gap, performing stunts and having fun. And when he finally tired himself out, he swam his way to his mother. Orpheus caught him and he shifted back to his human form. She put clothes on the boy and told Great Red that she would be taking care of him. But instead, Great Red told her she knows nothing of pendulum dragons, so how would she be qualified to take care of one? She said she'd find a way. But Great Red was not going to be the deadbeat dad of the millennia. There hasn't been a deadbeat dad in the supernatural world for 9 millennia, and he wasn't going to be that type of guy. He wasn't going to be the dragon that said, I don't have enough pride to raise my own son. So instead, him and Orpheus came to an agreement to raise Issei together. We skip about 5 years. Odd Eyes, now named Issei, is flying around the dimensional gap. Odd Eyes is what he's usually called by his father. It's his name, his dragon name. But his mother said his human name would be Issei. Issei didn't have any complaints, though he much preferred Odd Eyes. But, I digress. He was only being called by his middle name since Odd Eyes was his first name. And they didn't shelter Issei. Instead, they showed Issei off, telling others about how they showed Issei off. Odd Eyes was a prize, a natural deity, the strongest of all dragon gods. Strong enough to destroy everything. With his power came from infinity, dreams, and the power of creation. His power was nearly limitless. All the factions wanted Odd Eyes. As they learned, Odd Eyes could create life. He called his friends Performapals and Stargazer and Timegazer Magician. Stargazer and Timegazer would watch over things with the factions, and the factions could reach out to Stargazer and Timegazer to possibly talk with Odd Eyes' parents and see if they could get help from Odd Eyes. Odd Eyes was just a simple child, and a lot of the devil factions decided that their daughters would their daughters would marry Odd Eyes, creating a devil dragon. They all said that the pure blood devil dragon died long ago. The pure blood devil dragon, known as the Dragon of Chaos. His real name being, I hate to say this, but his real name being Silver, the Sky Dragon. Silver was an odd one. His power stemmed from how many devils existed, but it also stemmed from how many fallen existed. His power stemmed from 2 races, and it evolved to stem from how many humans existed too. Silver was an odd case. They all said Silver was a legendary dragon, unbeatable, of course. No one could even rival his power. But when Great Red was born, Silver was merely a folk tale, because Great Red showed off his power and took over everything for a short amount of time before he decided that the normal world was too boring and he wanted to return to his home in the dimensional gap. We now go to Issei's point of view right now. Currently, Issei is hanging out with Performer Foul Hip Hippo. Issei, hey Hip Hippo, what are we gonna do today? I don't know. Go ask Performer Foul Kaleidoscope Scorpion. Go ask Kaleidoscope. Kaleidoscope is asleep. Then what do we do? As those two chatted, Great Red and Orpheus were getting in some bonding time. They'd become mates after 4 years of raising Issei. And it was never a problem. There was never not once a problem until Drake and Albion came. Drake intruded the dimensional gap and snatched Odd Eyes. Drake told Great Red that he was gifting Odd Eyes something before he died. What he gave him, the power to boost, and Albion said he would give him the power of dividing, giving Odd Eyes 2 new crystals. He had 2 new he had a marking, kind of. He had lots more of these of his crystals. He had two on his 2 green ones on his back, symbolizing Drake's boosting power, and his red ones, his dark crimson red ones, turned to a lighter shape, showing that he could now divide whatever he wanted. And that's exactly when Issei activated both the powers. He accidentally divided and destroyed all the Performer Pals. He was so upset that he cried day and night for 2 years till the age of 7. That's when Great Red and Orpheus decided to take him to the world of the devils. Sir Zex had made them a deal to have Odd Eyes marry his younger sister, Rias, and in exchange, he'd give them whatever they wanted. And they didn't want anything but Odd Eyes' happiness. And Odd Eyes said he would do it. He'd lost all his friends because they were all creations and could be divided equally. But if he had real friends that weren't his own creations, they could stay intact. And Odd Eyes and his father and mother move in with the Grimmery family. Odd Eyes and Rias become great friends. And eventually they grow. It's been about 5 years since that day. Odd Eyes and Rias are now 13. Rias has her very own peerage, including a fallen angel named Akno, a half vampire named Gasper, a failed project named Kiba, and a Nico cat girl named Konica. Odd Eyes walks in. Odd Eyes, Rias, and her period are all in the human world going to school now. We go to Odd Eyes' first day. Odd Eyes walks in the school, and a lot of girls are commenting on his appearance with his multicolored hair, along with his multicolored eyes. Of course, Odd Eyes by this time has learned to hide his horns, tail, and scales in his human form. Odd Eyes, Odd Eyes takes offense to the girls yelling at him, and he yells back. The only thing Odd Eyes has left is Time Gazer and Stargazer Magician. He had sealed the both of them in a sacred gear he created called the Pendulum. The Pendulum is a Longinus sacred gear with the ability to create and summon any monster of the user's imagination. This Longinus can be used by any race at all. It is only at random. Most of the time, Odd Eyes has created this and had made a deal with the God of the Bible to allow his creation, sacred gear, to be transferred to every race. Of course, the God of the Bible didn't want it, but he did receive a pendulum dragon in return. Odd Eyes had created a pendulum, had created the 2 balls of energy that made it crystal, and handed it to the God of the Bible, telling him that can become a pendulum dragon if he uses enough energy into it. And the God of the Bible has made this a sacred treasure gifted by Odd Eyes. It shouldn't go to waste. And now we go to Odd Eyes. Odd Eyes' pendulum starts glowing. He'd accidentally activated his pendulum. Everyone stared in awe. And just as Time Gazer and Stargazer were about to appear, he snapped, stopping time. Time Gazer and Stargazer appeared, and he told them to erase everyone's memories to save himself some energy. He was going to have to go back to the underworld and fight another set and watch another rating game for his hand in marriage. Odd Eyes knew that Rias was going to win. She'd won every rating game. Closest rating game ever having was against the Phoenix family. And Odd Eyes, but what Odd Eyes didn't know is that a devil was watching. His name, Riser Phoenix. Riser wanted Rias for himself. He thought she would be a great addition to his harem, and decided to scope out the competition. Only competition being Odd Eyes. And he learned that Odd Eyes had a sacred gear, but was a pure dragon. He was a hybrid dragon, but not a mixture of human. No, instead, pendulum and infinite dragon, making him extremely dangerous. But Riser wouldn't be defeated, not by some pesky dragon, but little does he know, Odd Eyes is already on his trail. Odd Eyes have been watching Riser and seeing that he's made a few aggressive assaults toward him, and Odd Eyes doesn't take kindly to that. But anyways, we skip to Odd Eyes in class. He walks up to the front of the class and he states that his name is Odd Eyes Hyudo. And when they ask his full name, he says that his name is Odd Eyes. and he was named that by his father, considering his odd eyes. And everyone thought of it as a joke until he stopped time and created a birth certificate and showed it to everyone, which was shocking because their mouths were dropped. He told them that they can just call him by his middle name, Issei. It gets annoying when people that aren't family call him by his first name and they all thought he was playing games, and someone even decided to throw something at him. And that's when Odd Eyes caught it, flicked it back, and the kid had a cut across his face. Not, mind you, this is a piece of paper, and this wasn't a paper cut. This cut went deep. The boy he had cut was another kid. Her name was Volley Lucifer. Everyone had bad vibes about this girl. And Odd Eyes knows why her last name. Odd Eyes knows that she's a part of the old Satan faction. Yet he doesn't really care. Yet Odd Eyes has no need to indulge himself with fighting the host of the White Dragon of Division. But I shall skip. We go to Odd Eyes after school. He enters the underworld to watch a raiding game. And as soon as the raiding game begins, Rias and her peerage are going up against Sona Citri. And Sona Citri almost wins until Rias thinks about how she'll possibly lose Odd Eyes. Rias doesn't really have any liking towards Odd Eyes. And Odd Eyes knows this. He's read her mind multiple times. And he doesn't really care either. He doesn't really like her that much himself. He's more interested in a battle to find an actual girl worthy of him. And as soon as the raiding game ends, he's challenged by Riser Phoenix. Of course, everyone was shocked. And they were surprised that a lesser being such as Riser would dare challenge Odd Eyes. Of course, Odd Eyes wasn't taking kindly to this and made sure to add a limitation to his sacred gear. Of course, this Longinus is very special to him. So he made it so that no Phoenix demon could ever wield it. Anyone reincarnated into the Phoenix family would automatically have all their evil pieces destroyed, and then they would be revived and teleported away from that family, giving them access to their sacred gear, along with giving them their humanity back. But I digress. We should continue. Odd Eyes accepts this challenge. And Odd Eyes is not taking kindly to him. And Rias realizes how much Rias thinks that Odd Eyes is a wimp. Odd Eyes, of course, shifts from his dragon form to his human form and accepts their challenge. My apologies for that long break. I had to grab something. But anyways, as I was saying, Odd Eyes accepts the challenge. Rias started to gain more of a liking to him, because usually Odd Eyes was just lazy and always declined battles from weaker beings, as she put it. But Odd Eyes didn't care of her opinion. He never would. And the battle is scheduled a month from that day. And that's where I'll end this off. I've dragged this on for like 30 minutes, and psych! You just got Rickroll, baby. Just kidding, I ain't even put on Rickroll. But anyways, I'm gonna continue for another good minute. Odd Eyes would decide to humiliate this poor devil. And what the poor devil didn't know is he was challenging the wrong being. He thought he knew everything about Odd Eyes, but Odd Eyes still had his two boosting and dividing abilities hidden, for he would never show them. No one needed to know of them. And Volley Lucifer, she looked on in awe, and she decided that she wants Odd Eyes for herself. Maybe if a dragon of that power impregnates her with a baby, there would be a possible chance of a Pendulum devil dragon being born. And with him being the child of Orpheus and Great Red, the Apocalypse Pendulum dragon, that baby's limits would be near impossible. And Volley liked a chance. The real reason that Odd Eyes, but I shall explain the real reason why Odd Eyes said humans, devils, and so forth, is because all his descendants will get the Pendulum of Stargazer and Timegazer Magician. Being drawback of the Pendulum, it will only skip the generation, skip a child that is born of the Phoenix family and one of his descendants, or that child being reincarnated by the Phoenix family. It'll just turn the child back human and awaken the power. But I digress. Volley decides that maybe she should challenge Rias. She hasn't used any of her evil pieces. She probably would never use her evil pieces, seeing as she's a half-devil, and lots of the nobles do dislike her. They cannot deny her heritage and not give her her own set of evil pieces. Though they have a hatred towards the girl, they cannot do anything, sadly. Yet, that is a story for another time. We skip a month. Odd Eyes is well prepared to take on Riser Phoenix. As the raiding game begins, Odd Eyes only powers up a little, simply shooting 2 blasts of energy. Both of Riser's pawn areas have been destroyed, and his queen, rooks, knights, and bishops are left. Riser is already sweating. He knew that all his pawns were no pushovers. He made sure that he trained his pawns to their absolute limit. He knew that his harem wasn't going to be filled with a bunch of weaklings. The only ones that had a true reason to be weak were the bishops And then again, they wouldn't even be weak because he would make sure that their magic prowess was incredible. The knights were the first ones to spring in action. They both swarmed Odd Eyes' sides and went for a slash to deal some damage when simply Odd Eyes caught both their blades and revealed his horns and tails. He also revealed his back spikes. Everyone was shocked when they all heard boost. It seems Odd Eyes they all knew that noise. That was from the Red Dragon Emperor Drake. They knew that he could transfer his power, but they didn't think that he would transfer it to a child. Nonetheless, a child Orpheus and Great Red. He ran the risk of getting killed. Along with the sound of divine dividing. Volley's eyes widened. Rias and her peerage were sitting in their seats excitedly. After hearing that first boost, they were already startled, but after hearing that divide sound, they wondered how Odd Eyes was so strong. After hearing that noise, the two knights knew that their time was up. Not only had he boosted his power so he could make more short work of them, he'd also divided their power and made it his own. Then Odd Eyes simply slapped the fucking shit out of their face, nigga. I mean, they were gone. Like, the amount of impact in that slap, you could hear it from the other side of the underworld type slap, nigga. You could hear that shit in the dimensional gap, cause he slapped this shit out their face. Them niggas was gone. Them niggas might be in the ER till that nigga like 20. No capity. But anyways, they're gone. Of course, they didn't take any damage, but instead, they were simply sent out of the battle with lots of injuries. All the knights and pawns, both the knights and all the pawns were all rushed to get checked out by fairy dragons. The devils had made a small alliance with fairy dragons. They would have tried to kill them, but the fairy dragons were always protected by Great Red and Orpheus, so they could never do anything but try to make an alliance with them in the hopes that the fairy dragons might aid them one day if another holy war sparks. Though that day would never come, as they didn't know yet. But then the two bishops appeared in gigantic barriers and shot many energy attacks, while Odd Eyes simply kept dividing them and stealing power, and then he would boost to tank the rest. After a while, the bishops went and decided to combine attacks, and that's when Odd Eyes decided it was done. He was done playing games. He was shrouded in a white light, and what pierced that light was a black shape in the shape of a dragon and one red and green eye piercing out. They all feared he would transform into his dragon state and decide to destroy them. They didn't think that attack would anger him so much that he would decide to play petty and destroy them right then and there. Instead, Odd Eyes used Instead, Odd Eyes shifted back and activated his balance breaker. He was shrouded in the light. And I'm going to end it off here. Just kidding. Actually, I am. Though, I'll describe it. Odd Eyes was shrouded in a bright light. His scales changed color. A giant pendulum came out of his back, and his eyes had shifted colors. But this is where I'll end it off for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next texting story or part 2 video. Appreciate it, and goodbye.